Perhaps it is helpful to look at the relation between faith and multiple faith traditions briefly from a strictly philosophical or theoretical perspective. In the philosophical tradition, the quest for truth in its vertical and lateral senses is usually discussed as the conundrum of the one and the many, or else of absolutism and relativism. Absolutism here means that truth is one and can be known absolutely and with certainty. That's the absolutism of truth. Denial of this absolute claim is called relativism, involving the denial of the oneness of truth, a denial entailing the randomness and ultimately the dismissal of truth altogether. Now, is there an exit from this conundrum? An exit from this conundrum of absolutism and relativism, of truth and dialogue? Can there be a persistent pursuit of truth coupled with the acceptance of a variety of approaches to truth? Differently phrased, can truth be pursued through dialogue? Philosophically, it's the same question that I discussed previously, theologically, but philosophically, that's the issue. Can truth be pursued through dialogue? Now, a prime example of this possibility stands at the very threshold of Western philosophy, namely the dialogues of Plato. In these dialogues, Socrates does not proclaim a univocal doctrine of truth, but through questions and answers, through trial and error, seeks to clear a path for the pursuit of truth for people from different backgrounds. In a loose fashion, parallels to these dialogues can be found in medieval scholarly disputations, in the debates between the Indian schools of philosophy, so-called darshanas, and in monastic Buddhist disputations. I had a friend who spent about 15 years in Buddhist monasteries in Tibet and became acquainted with the intense dialogic debating practices in these monastic communities. Now, the conundrum of the one and the many, of absolutism and relativism, carries over into the domain of political or practical philosophy. Here the dilemma is usually phrased in terms of the relation between the common good, shared by all members of a community, and the variety of concrete or distinct goods perceived by particular individuals or segments of the society. And David earlier mentioned very kindly that one of my latest books is called In Search of the Good Life, which could also be called In Search of the Common Good, Search of the Good Life. Now, the dangers here lurk on all sides. If the common good is erected into a uniform doctrine or ideology, the peril of totalitarianism arises together with its accessories of mind control, brainwashing, repression of dissent. On the other hand, if goodness is identified with particular interest or desire, social life is abandoned to egomania and ultimately the struggle of warlords, the Hobbesian war of all against all. The question here becomes how to reconcile the common good with a variety of interpretations. Differently put, how to preserve the horizon of goodness, of the good life, in the midst of diversity. How to preserve goodness, truth, beauty in the midst of diversity. In a series of writings, political theorist William Connolly has clearly perceived and pinpointed the issue. In a recent text titled Pluralism, he champions what he calls a deep or expansive social, cultural, and religious pluralism, but without endorsing a simple multiplication or possible clash of self-interests. In his presentation, pluralism does not mean the mere plurality or juxtaposition of different orientations, sort of in a cafeteria of beliefs. Beliefs which would be hostile or indifferent to each other. Rather, the depth character of pluralism involves a deep mutual engagement, what he calls a receptive generosity between different agents or faith traditions. Such generosity is not merely a biological trait, but an ethical or civic disposition or virtue, a disposition disclosing at least a latent orientation to the horizon of goodness, of the good.